So we're going to start with TreVeyon Henderson because he's currently the consensus number 3 back in this class. I'll tell you that when we get to Quinshon Judkins after this, Matt's probably going to disagree. But Matt, I'll start with you. My perception on Henderson is that if you're in a full PPR league, you'll probably be a little more excited than if you're in a half PPR league, and a lot more excited than if you're in a non-PPR league. Is his receiving profile where the upside lies?
Yeah, it is. And because he is what people hoped DeAndre Swift would be as a talent. I think that he's a good pass catcher who can get it a little bit better, but still good enough to play right away. He's got that great speed and very strong acceleration. He's a fantastic open field player. So they're going to try and get him in space as much as possible, and they're going to do that with a lot outside runs, draw plays. They're going to use them a good bit on screens, and then also down, different types of schemed passes. So there's a lot of value from him in that respect, and he's a better decision maker than DeAndre Swift ever was. In the sense that DeAndre Swift's one of those players that in Philadelphia he looked good because you literally had a quarterback and an offensive line that forced defenders on read option, that forced anywhere as many as 2 to 3 defenders to run after the quarterback. And when you take away 2 to 3 defenders at the line of scrimmage to go in the quarterback's direction, you have much easier decisions to make. Now, and I'd say Swift is more of a guy who bounces things outside too often and doesn't really take what's there as often as he should. Now, TreVeyon Henderson can somewhat short circuit a little bit when the play isn't blocked up and goes exactly the way it's designed as schemed. But he is a good tight crease runner, whereas DeAndre Swift would see a tight crease and go, "Oh no, I'm not going there. Let me bounce that outside."
Right.
TreVeyon Henderson goes, "That's blocked up the way it's supposed to be. I can see that, and I'll get skinny and hit it." So he's good at that. But if he deals with penetration or something's off about how it's developing, that's when his footwork short circuits a little bit, and you can see that he doesn't have an answer for what he needs to show there. But you're not featuring him like Damian Martinez or Quinshon Judkins. So most likely you're going to feature him more how you saw Travis Etienne being featured, or DeAndre Swift being featured in Detroit, or Jahmyr Gibbs. And from that perspective, he's absolutely worth one of the top 5 picks in a dynasty draft right now because of how he's going to be used if it's a PPR league.
So Jacob, he talked a lot about how he's what we hoped DeAndre Swift would be. The name that I've heard thrown around more often is, I think, maybe the more optimistic case, just a slightly lesser version of Jahmyr Gibbs. Do you think the numbers, Jacob, justify that comparison? And where do you see the differences between those two?
I don't. I do think Jahmyr Gibbs is clearly a tier above him. And then also, if you just watch them run, they're very different. This is a funny description, but like as movers, I would compare Jahmyr Gibbs to like Allen Iverson and TreVeyon Henderson as like Kemba Walker or something like that. Like he's much more like start, stop, jumping around and stuff like that, where it's a different kind of like it bursts and explosiveness. He's very good, but like I don't, to me, Gibbs is rarefied air. I do. And the other thing is the receiving profile. The pass blocking is really good for Henderson. He had the second most career pass blocking reps in the class behind only Taj Brooks. And he only allowed a 4.6% pressure rate on those pass blocking snaps. So only Ollie Gordon and LaQuint Allen had better rates among running backs with 100 plus pass blocking reps in their career. That's good. He can get on the field on passing downs for sure. But if you look at his actual receiving production, it wasn't Jahmyr Gibbs. It wasn't anything close, honestly, in terms of yard per out run or total receiving production. I think that could be unlocked at the next level, but it's a projection to put him in that kind of territory. The only stat that I wanted to add on Henderson, and I wanted to get Matt's perspective on this. I hear people speculate that he would be good as like an outside zone rusher, which I think makes some sense given his speed, given his ability to make like one cut and hit it. But for what it's worth, in his career, he was much better as a man gap counter runner than he was on zone runs. 7.6 yards per run on man power runs compared to 5.7 on zone runs. And Ohio State was primarily a zone rushing scheme before Chip Kelly in 2024, and they moved to more man runs. And we saw Hendo was unlocked last year, career best 7.1 yards rush in 2024. So do you think that makes sense, or do you think that he was just at his best last year because it was his fourth season?
No, I think that absolutely makes sense because, see, I always describe it this way. Zone running is very much like multiple choice, whereas man gap running is more like fill in the blank. So
Love it.
you actually have to be more strategic behind the line of scrimmage and set your blockers up and be better at processing the field as a zone runner, because I know that Kyle Shanahan has taken some gap runners and made them outside zone runners, and they've had some success. Tevin Coleman was eventually one of them. I would also say that I want to make sure my Levon Kirkland linebacker of a dog wasn't tearing up anything that he shouldn't be, but he's not. I would say that when it comes to those choices, like with Tevin Coleman or with Elijah Mitchell, Kyle Shanahan likes to kind of gapify his outside zone scheme and simplify it, because in most outside zone, you have three choices to make. You either cram it up the middle where it's designed, you either cut it back, go behind the flow against the grain, or you bounce it outside, and you have a chance to kind of do all three. So as a classic outside zone back, I could see how TreVeyon Henderson may not be as strong at that, because I thought he was much better at, here's the decision, manipulate that one area, and if it's not manipulatable, just take what's there and get whatever you can. Use your speed. And with gap, you're really trying to use your speed, and the most of the onus is on the offensive line to do their job and get that one crease open. Like, that's their job. And where in zone, it's more like, get in that way, get in the area, flow it in this one direction, and let the back determine who he's going to set up. So I would say the better processors are zone runners, but the better athletes at the running back position tend to be gap runners. And some guys do both really well. So I think if they transition to him to outside zone's the best transition from man gap blocking to zone, because you can make it more like, yeah, just hit this. I just want you to hit that mark. That's where Trey Sermon had difficulty in Shanahan's offense, is because Sermon was more of a reader type, go slow and read it, kind of like Le'Veon Bell or Frank Gore. And Shanahan just wanted a guy who was more of a gap runner, who was speedy and just hit that thing hard. I don't care if it's open or not, just get there. And our blockers will help you get the push and get downfield.
So you guys really kind of answered my third question. I was thinking more based on the fact that Henderson does need that pass catching role. I'm expecting he's going to be a day 2 pick, but even talking about his differences in the different schemes, it seems like amongst these other backs, he may be as dependent as anybody on what team he lands with and what type of scheme they run, what type of role they have for a pass catching back.
Yeah, and I've got the coordinators that use the most man gap rushing right here. It's the Patriots and the Bengals, I think, are two that could draft a running back that he would fit well with. Potentially the Giants. Dayball used it about 32% of his runs last year. And then the team that uses it the most is the Rams, using a ton of duo now. And that would just be such a fun fit. I don't know if fantasy managers would like it, but it would be such a fun fit.
Kyron Williams is just going to keep being ranked way too low and finishing as the top 5 running back, and we're going to have to live with it. I do want to move on